Hello, welcome to iFanboy Booksplode. We're talking about Ronin. My name is Conor Kilpatrick. I'm here with Josh Flanagan.
Hi there.
And the Booksplode show is our bi-monthly show unlocked by our patrons at patreon.com/iFanboy, in which every other month we review a graphic novel, a collected edition, something beyond the usual single issue. And that, of course, alternates with Josh's Talksplode show. And this month, Josh's suggestion was Ronin. I should cover the microphone with the book. From Frank Miller.
You'll get it eventually.
It's funny because I could hear it. I was like, oh, I just went away. The first collection edition of Ronin came out in 1987, but it, of course, was a 6-issue miniseries published by DC Comics that started in 1983. Came out, went through in 1994. They're all double-sized issues, and leads directly into this creative period leads directly into Dark Knight Returns.
I, for my entire life, up until a day ago, thought this came out after Dark Knight Returns. Because I learned, like literally in 1989, I learned about it after I learned about Dark Knight Returns. Yeah. And I bought it afterwards. And so in my head, and then I'm looking at the indicia, and I'm like, copyright 83, but that means... And even then, I didn't quite. I was like, maybe he just created the character at that point. And then I was looking at Wikipedia, and I was like, oh. However, I think that the thing that struck me is that I'm pretty sure, I don't know how it wouldn't be. This has to be Frank Miller's first long form original story.
I think so. And I should have looked up. He's relatively young. How old was he in 1983?
Not old.
50, he's born in 57. So it's 24?
26.
26. So this is not a math show. So as the story goes, I have the Absolute Edition. There's a Jeanette Kahn introduction in it. And she was the publisher of DC Comics at the time. This was originally going to be a Marvel thing, but she convinced him to bring it over to DC. He was, at the time, on Daredevil. Yeah. And the impetus for this book came from his research for Daredevil into ninja, Japanese samurai culture, looking into all that. And then through that research, this idea for this Japanese techno thriller story came to him. It's not a story that takes place in old Japan. It's a cyberpunk story. Yep. And what's funny is that much like The Dark Knight Returns, it's very much steeped in the fact that Miller was living in early 80s Manhattan.
It's very similar in that. Like, this could be across town in Gotham.
Oh, I was even laughing because, do you remember in The Dark Knight Returns there was that dude with the skull on his crotch? He was one of the criminals. Like, he had like a skull cod piece, and in this, a bunch of people wear cod pieces. So like he clearly had his thing at the time.
And this is a whole thing I actually want to, but maybe too early about it. But I'm going to leave you with this, or I'm going to start it with this, and we're going to pin it, and maybe we come back. What's with topless Nazi ladies?
Well, that's the other thing, is he also had topless Nazi ladies also in Dark Knight Returns. So you're right. I mean, this could have been a different neighborhood in the same.
Very specific.
Maybe there was a bar in his neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Speaking of which, so Lynn Varley also colored this book. Unlike Dark Knight Returns, there is no inker on it. Oh, Klaus Janson. Not Klaus Janson. Who am I thinking of?
Yeah, no, Klaus Janson.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. I just doubted my Batman knowledge. Letters by John Costanza, who was George Costanza's uncle. The name I've never seen before or since. I'm sure he's around.
The thing about John Costanza, he wasn't a letterer. It's just that one day someone came in and he said he was, because he thought that's the least likely thing to make him. And it turned out he ended up with the job, and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
And Kramer was like, right. Just draw. You just write the words out. So if you're watching at home, the cover on the screen is the most recent collected cover. This is not the original 87 cover. There's been many editions. Josh has one. That's one of the covers I really remember. Is the guy the Ronin standing in the sewers,
which is not a particularly memorable or interesting visual, which I think doesn't help. This is the first. From what I can, I think this is the first edition of the trade. I would have bought it around 88.
Oh wow! So you have the very first trade.
I think it because on the back, like the only quotes on the back are from Dark Knight Returns.
What does the indicia say that the date of the publication is? Because if it's 87, then it's the first edition. Then you should sell that and buy a new house.
Yeah, it's 87.
Yeah, so you've got the first edition.
Yeah, I've had it since it was new. Like
that's and it still looks kind of new. I thought you bought a new comic.
You know, it's a good paper. Like it's not like they put it on.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
like
this was a high grade product. There were no ads in the original issues. They put it out on high grade paper. There's only one thing he wanted he didn't get. I think it was square binding. They didn't do square binding. But
you know what's funny though is the cover price on this 1987 cover price is $16.95.
That's a lot. I feel like Dark Knight Returns was because that's somewhere I had. I think I still have it, the original edition of that too. The original first trade, and it's something around there too.
It's a lot, and of course there's this.
Yeah, I was surprised. So okay, before we delve into the story itself, now I've owned this Absolute for years. I don't know, whenever it came out is when I bought it. I don't know what year. This was an early one though.
Well, the question there for me is like, so did you buy it as an Absolute because you
2008 was when I bought
like
this.
You really wanted it because you loved it, or were you trying to like fill out the library?
No,
I've never heard you talk about this.
Yeah. I've read. I swear there's a time we talked about Ronin on one of our shows.
Sure, yeah.
Over the years, I couldn't find it. Granted, I didn't look super hard. It might have been on a video show. It might have been on the Frank Miller show we did for the video show.
But I know that I didn't reread it for that.
I don't remember. I definitely would have read it. I definitely read it when I bought it originally. I definitely didn't remember a single thing about it when I read it again for this show. I think I'm just guessing I would have seen it because I had a lot of friends, and I had two older friends in my apartment building who read comics, and they might have had it. Or I just knew it because it was around in the DC comics. There had been ads for it, and Frank Miller was a creator I really loved, and so I would have noticed it. I may not have read it until 2008. I don't know, but I feel like I did.
So did you? I mean, you said you didn't remember it.
I remember nothing about it.
Like, did you have feelings about it? Did you like? I guess you didn't remember.
I remember nothing about it. I remember. I mean,
the book sight unseen.
I bought it because it's Ronin and it's Frank Miller. It's a famous it's a very important, I think, comic in that. This came out in '83. This is not the kind of thing that DC Comics made. This is an important. No matter what you think about the insides, the guts of it, it's an important book in the history of comics, and
it is like a Vertigo
oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I just love Frank Miller. He's one of my all-time favorite creators. So that's why I bought it.
So I bought it a long time ago.
Plus, I was a billionaire back then. I was just spending money.
Yeah. I know for a fact you were not. If we're saying 2008, that's definitely not the case.
I was definitely not a billionaire. 2008.
It was subsistence living, but piling up absolutely.
Eating a lot of ramen and mac and cheese.
They were oil futures.
Doing that.
I read it a long time ago. I don't remember when I must have read it when I bought it, and I can't imagine this would have been, when I was like a 11, 12-year-old, unless I found a perfectly new copy after that at some point. But I don't remember reading it as a young person. I remember reading it probably 20, 25 years ago.
I would be fascinated to know if you bought it new in '87 when you were 10 or the year after when you were 11 and why. But we'll never know. But I'd be fascinated to have that.
Well, Dark Knight Returns is one of the very first things that I.
So you saw the same guy's name and we're like, oh, I'll get that too.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same then as I am now. I was like, I like this person. What else have they done?
Sure.
And it was in very much the same vein. So.
Oh yeah.
I ended up with it. And I
Go ahead. No, I was going to ask you remembered reading it when you did this reading.
Kind of, but not really.
Do you remember the story, like the high level of the story at all? Because I didn't remember anything.
No, I remember that it was like a future sci-fi kind of thing. And I vaguely at the time that I read it, I didn't know anything about Japanese samurai culture or anything like that, or really AI or any of that. What I remember is that I didn't. Yeah, we'll get to that. I didn't particularly like it, and I really wanted to. I didn't dislike it. I just didn't get it.
You mean 25 years ago?
Yeah.
So
And
like
so
around college
the
graduation.
thing I was curious about this time, and the reason that I brought it up is, there's definitely a zeitgeist thing going on with sort of Japanese samurai culture. And I've surrounded myself with it to a certain extent, in the aftermath of Shogun and reading through all the Usagi that I've been reading, Usagi Yojimbo comics, and reading Lone Wolf and Cub. And also I had
Which
gone
was an influence according to the
you think?
Lone Wolf and Cub influenced everything.
And yeah, but I mean, it's like through this.
Yeah.
Like everyone got this like, oh my God. And he was like, I was just literally doing no. And then also I had seen that Frank Miller documentary that came out.
Yeah, you're on a Frank Miller kick right now.
I mean, I think I'm at the tail end of it, but once that kicked in, I thought at some point I was like, I want to read that again because I really liked the place that it took in sort of his comic book evolution. So the idea was like, I kind of need an excuse to go read it again and make time to do it. So that's, I think, why I said it. And before we get the next further, I'm going to ask you, do you know what happened
in the book?
The
story?
I actually think I got it by the end, but right up into the last few pages, I was like, I'm not sure.
No, this is such a tough read and review because I don't love the story, and I think it's gorgeous, and I think it's important. But
I didn't particularly love it, but I could appreciate a lot of it.
Yeah,
and it's like one of your favorite band's first album or so, which isn't great.
Before the one that blows him up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a big star.
Yeah.
Daredevil made him a star.
I felt the same way about Daredevil the first time I read it, which was forever ago, I was like, I didn't quite get it. I didn't know the context to understand what was good about it at the time.
So my feeling is that the story got away from him.
I agree.
And he was being very ambitious, which I applaud. Maybe too obtuse.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the bumpiness in his storytelling is refined for Dark Knight Returns. Because there's a lot of things he does, the way he stacks panels, a lot of the character and art designs are very similar. I just think the way he tells the story in Dark Knight Returns is very different than Ronin, and Ronin is very confusing. It doesn't help that it's like there's a demon and there's a techno thing, and then there's souls trapped in a sword, but are they really? But I guess they are. And then there's a guy with telekinesis, and there's a woman whose race keeps changing every issue.
Yes, it does.
I just felt like he had so many ideas, and he was so excited to get them out in a story that wasn't involving superheroes, like so many of these creators do, that I think it just got away from him.
I think that's very accurate. I also thought it got better.
It did
as it went on. The first half, way too much with nothing. And I was like, the first half, I was actually kind of struggling. I was like, oh, this is rough. And
there was a point where I was like, God damn it, Josh.
Yeah, it just was. And then once it got moving, basically once the Ronin was like a thing, and also ditched the hippie guy. Once he ditched the hippie guy and hooked up with the lady.
Was that like a metaphor for comics?
I don't know. I think it was just Tommy. Whoa. Yes.
Funky Winterbean or whatever the fuck. Funky Flashman.
There was that. There was another one. The guy who designed Virgo, the AI.
Yeah.
At one point, he gets told, "You didn't read the contract. You don't own any of this. It's work for hire." I was like, "Ooh."
So okay.
Shots fired.
I'm not going to attempt to distill down the entire story, but it opens up in feudal Japan. Super excited. There's a samurai who's got a master. He's protecting him, but then the master gets killed. So they
have cool conversations. I was upset when the master was killed.
I know.
I was like, let's do this.
The master died, so he becomes a Ronin, and then a demon appears, and then they fight, and they both die. And then we jump ahead to modern day New York, and I was like, well, fuck. Like, I was really enjoying the samurai part. Why did we have to go there? Mm-hmm. In New York, which is a hellscape.
It's not exactly modern, but it was
worse than Dark Knight Returns. Worse than, like we talked about this on the show. I don't know what show it was fairly recently, but like the 80s, like I grew up in Manhattan. I was born in 1977. Um, it's fine. I lived there, but it wasn't great. I recognize the things that got better or worse, but cities were in a dark place starting in the late '60s. It didn't come out of them until the middle '90s, and
Mhm.
so he was sort of there in a not a great part of town at the time for sure, and that influenced a lot of his work in Daredevil and Ronin and Dark Knight Returns and other things. But I'm sure Sin City. And so you can really see that here, where it's a dystopian situation. There's a giant corporation that's got a giant like organic base in the middle of Manhattan that keeps getting bigger as the book goes
Mhm.
on. And actually, I have a nice picture of that here. Well, one of the things I really liked was his giant like cityscape double page spreads that
Yeah.
would like break up the story. I spent a lot of time looking at the drawings. They're really nice.
I really appreciated, which is different than enjoyed, but also enjoyed, but really more appreciated the fact. I mean, like, this is like a guy who's been let out of the house. This
Hmm.
is like his comic book Rumspringa. Like,
Oh,
he
well, for
was
sure.
like,
That's why I think there's so many ideas. He's just like, oh,
right, but even like the art, he's like, I'm gonna get more abstract on this stuff because I'm not allowed to do it. And
I mean, look at this
it's
one. I mean, he does
yeah.
so many different
I stopped
styles.
on that. I
He
stopped
does
on that for a
so
while.
many different styles in the book. He does cross hatching in a way I don't think he ever does again
Mhm.
to really show how gritty every surface is.
And I
And it's
think
wonderful.
he had to do all this to get to where he went after this.
Right.
And so it's not always pretty. Um, yeah, that's great. But also at the same time, like, I think that the other thing that he's doing there is, he had gone through, Lone Wolf and Cub and other stuff by them. And there's definitely parts in here where he's just trying that out,
Yeah.
to draw. Like, there's a whole fight scene where I was like, this is straight out of Lone Wolf and Cub. And I don't mean that as a like he saw something and was excited. Is any
Yeah.
like again like a musician who's like,
It's
oh
an
yeah, I saw this
influence.
guitar
Artists are
pedal.
influenced by other artists.
Yeah, and
That's how
then
it.
this spreads out like a seed. I think that Americans wouldn't even know about Lone Wolf and Cub comics if it wasn't for Frank Miller. I mean, like when they published them at Dark Horse, he
Yeah.
he did all the covers. He, kind of
He read them in Japanese because they weren't in him. They weren't published in English, so he
yeah.
had to just follow the art along. Um, but anyway, getting back to the story. So there's this like giant company with an organic base, and it's controlled by this AI. It's called artificial intelligence person, and the people who run the company are
Virgo.
the thing's called Virgo. The people who run the company are pretty good. They're trying to use it for good. Although I don't know how the giant base squares with that. But then the demon from the original part shows up because the soul of of Ronin and the demon were encased in the sword that killed them both, and the demon somehow escapes. I don't remember how, and
The scientists are doing experiments on the sword.
infects the CEO of the company, and immediately turns it from uh, we're trying to help humanity company to let's make weapons for war, and that's kind of where we go. And then there's a lot. There's
And then
a kid
Ronin
with
is
no arms and legs who hangs out
Billy,
with the AI and
right?
has telekinesis, but doesn't really understand that they have telekinesis in the beginning.
He's mentally impaired. He
Somehow is taken over by the soul of the Ronin and becomes the Ronin physically, and you just kind of go with it. And then looks and talks but the AI gave him metal robot arms and legs.
because he had no arms and legs.
It was very confusing, but I just kind of went with it.
I think
And then they fight.
I think he knew what it was because at the end it clears up. I mean, like last page, like 2 or 3 pages from the end. I was like, okay, this has been what's going on. But they sort of he takes his time. He uses all 6 issues of this. I don't know that this was actually 6 issues worth of stuff, but if that's what it takes the man to sort of
If
work
you look at
something
the
out
very
in the
end,
art.
like that art looks exactly like Dark Knight Returns. Like
Yes.
he, by the time he gets to the end, his style is getting there, and even
Mhm.
the layouts of all like tons and tons of panels, and it really
Yeah.
does. It does really reflect where he's going. I just, then there's conflict between the various factions. There's the demon. There's the Ronin. There's the other people at the company. There's this woman who was the head of security and married to the president or one of the founders of the company, and she, of course, is not having a very satisfying sexual relationship with her husband, so she ends up finding one with Ronin.
I
Side
gotta
note:
say,
the kid was obsessed with her before, so that's all weird too. And
I gotta say there's a scene where the two of them, the Casey
Casey
and I
Ronin,
forget his name. No,
Oh,
the
Peter.
husband, Peter.
Is it
Like
Peter?
they're in bed and like it's actually really sweet. Like they really care about each other, but it's like there's all this heaviness between them, and it's not kind of working out. And they
Peter.
both know it. Yeah, and I thought that was really good. It was this sort of moment of reality, but sort of portrayed
Yeah, he
really
wasn't an asshole
skillfully.
about it. It was just like,
No, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
sorry. And so there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of back and forth. There's some underground creatures who live in the darkness of the tunnels with no light. There's some
They're the offspring of the subway tunnel people, and they never came out.
right, and then there's the not topless Nazis as mentioned before. There's a black gang that he pits against the Nazi gang. Um, there's just a lot of things happening, and Frank Miller's working through a lot of things, and it's not always so cohesive.
So about that street gang kind of
Yeah.
thing, and some of the language that you wouldn't use today, even in fiction necessarily. I'm always trying to put this in the context of you got a guy, he's a kid, he's 26. Anybody under 30 to me is a kid right now. So he's 26. He's from literally the farm in Vermont.
Right.
And he comes down to the set of Taxi Driver.
No, or Death Wish.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Or The Warriors or whatever
Yep.
it is. And he's trying to take all this in. And, but at the same time, like you're steeped in movies and art and books and whatever that sort of have a fictional version of this. And he puts it all together in this stew. And I just figure I was like, this is a guy trying to work out. Cause I was like, there's no chance you don't he's seeing all of this stuff and hearing all of this language on the street. Like he's not making it up.
No,
it's there. He lives in a Hell's Kitchen for Christ's sake. And it was called that for a reason.
Yeah. It was not great back then. We didn't go back down there,
and it's literally like it's a comic book version of Paul Schrader's Taxi Driver. I mean, it's trying to sort of figure out that world, and this is it's only 7 years later actually, but he'd also seen the movies and stuff, I'm sure. So it all feeds into itself. But it's funny because he didn't get it out of his system. He tried it in Daredevil, and then he did it in this, and then he does it in Dark Knight Returns.
Well, he said it, he'd been robbed and beaten up several times in the neighborhood. And, the city didn't get better between now and 87, 83 and 87. So I understand why. It's just from a storytelling point of view, it was just hard because I found myself constantly having to go, wait, what?
Many of the protagonists who worked at, or not even protagonists, characters who worked at Aquarius looked not dissimilar from one another. Right. So Peter, who is the husband of the woman, Casey, who invented Aquarius, it was his idea. And then Taggart, who was the head of Aquarius and his very good friend until he was, I think he was actually not possessed by the demon. He was destroyed by the demon, and the demon took on his form, I believe.
Yes, no, you're right. You're right. He the demon just basically formed. Yes,
right. And then there was another guy whose name sounded like a word, Placid or Lesser, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he looked the same too. And there was a woman, Learned and Sandy, they kind of looked the same too. And then there was a therapist lady, they were all in the Hydra suits or Hydra suits almost.
Their colors are green and yellow. A lot of green and yellow. I mean, it's beautifully colored. It's much closer to the original Dark Knight than anything. And just I keep coming across these beautiful double page spreads or images, and you can just imagine him sitting on the roof sketching the city of skyline, because there's a lot of that in here, which is what he did sometimes. And it's just unfortunate because I really want it to be a story that I latched onto, as opposed to just being like, I guess I understand what's happening.
It's a lot of things that he wanted to do something with.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily go together. I think. I think he really liked the idea of feudal Japan and this Ronin,
like a Ronin from the past who comes to a honorless future, right? From a society that's all about honor to a society that's got no honor left. And that's a really interesting premise.
Sure.
I don't think he successfully executed it, because I think there were too many other things in the way. But like I said, it was so interesting to read and wonderful to look at that I forgive him for his excess here. But I really
I,
would have loved a simpler, more streamlined
I think it is
story.
absolutely worth reading, but
Oh yeah,
kind of academically in a way. I mean, there's lots to enjoy, and like if you're like me and you like to see the not the creative process in terms of how you do something, but like how an artist is formed,
mm-hmm.
and
Oh
I
yeah,
love that, like I've got the first Radiohead record over here. It's not good. There's some
right.
really great things in it, and that leads to another pretty good album and then a bunch of really amazing ones. But like I got it. I have it here. I'm glad I listened to it. I'm familiar with it. I'm glad I read this and can see this is much more interesting being in 1983 than being something that follows Dark Knight Return. Like that would be weird.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
this,
And the
I
artist's
get
journey is always great. It's always interesting to see early films from a filmmaker you like, or like you said, listen to a record for a band you like, or
and you
anything.
hear, you see the things that there's hints of the things they haven't quite figured out, but they're there at the
Oh,
same time.
there's 100 things that are in the Dark Knight Returns that are in this book that I was like, oh
Yeah.
wow, cool. That's where he did, like, he was
Yeah.
still on this. Like I said, like the cod pieces. Like, what's he all about cod pieces? Or like the knots, the topless knots. So I was like, really? Like that was interesting. But it's interesting to me and you to see that in an artist's work, and it's not that far apart. But clearly, something's going on in his neighborhood.
Yeah, but also like at this point, you can also just be like, okay, so he's walking around. It's 1981, 82.
Yeah.
What are the chances he sees a topless Nazi lady in New York City?
In the
50.
village, not that far.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm like, it seems ridiculous, and I was like, I'm guessing he saw that, and that shit stuck with him. Like, I think that's what that is.
Right, maybe, yeah. When year did he start Daredevil? 83?
I mean, it was like
The same
no,
year?
not that late. No, it was like 79, 80. I think it was like early.
Daredevil. Yeah, 79. Well, 79 was the first time he drew Daredevil in Spider-Man comic.
He drew it for a while, which
his first issue was 79. Daredevil 158, 79. So he was
22. 20, yeah.
Yeah, jeez.
And like again, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you're talking about coming from Vermont in the late 70s to New York City,
right?
Nothing.
22 years old drawing comics.
Nothing can prepare you for that. And it's
hard enough people now.
Man, if you can find that Frank Miller, because I think it's Becoming Frank Miller. I might be wrong. It's absolutely worth it if you're at all interested in the history and art of comic books. But this tells that story. Like this is an artist's growth, journey here. Now, let's also give him credit for the fact that he's extremely intelligent, and everything in here about AI is so spot. I mean, Neil Stephenson would look at this and be like, "Yeah, that's pretty good." I mean, it's everything that's scary about it. Like I thought that so the AI that controls Aquarius Corporation, like at first it's like, oh, it controls the whole building, it controls the computer. Then later, like, no, it sucks minerals out of the ground and makes things. It designed all this stuff, and like the way that he describes it, it's one of the things he does really well. Is over time, the people talking about Virgo get more, and they're like, man, we can't even keep up with it, so we just let it go. And you're just like, this is terrifying.
What they're doing now.
And then the personality of the robot seems really nice at first, and as you go through it, it gets more and more. Sinister is actually too strong, because there's party is like maybe it is still kind of coming from a good place.
It's sort of 2001. Right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
It's sort of like that robot where it's on the surface, it's polite and it's nice, and it's what are you doing, Dave?
The arc of this character construct is very in line with how I still think of this technology.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, we were.
I would just like real quick. I've nothing against any of our future leaders.
Right. We look forward to our computer overlords.
I applaud the advances that are being made as a result of machine learning.
I'm not at all worried about my job.
I'm worried about so much more than just that. But that.
So, it just was an interesting experience. So I read this in 3 chunks. I read the first 3 issues in one go, and then I read 2 issues and then 1. I was just so tired. I was trying to finish it a second ago, but
Hmm.
and that made it difficult because, like you said, so many of the characters are hard to distinguish. That I was starting to lose, and it wasn't like over a long period of time. It was all within a week.
And I was like, what is this like doing monthly? Good Lord.
Well, they, yeah, I don't know. And it's interesting because also in '83, there's a lot more kids reading comics every month.
Mhm.
There's certainly a more mature audience. That started in the '60s, but
Right.
it's still very much a kids medium. So that's one of the reasons why I liked reading this, because it very much is like a bomb dropping. It doesn't kick off the modern age like Dark Knight and Watchmen do, but it sets it up.
Yeah, and it's odd because actually, like in terms of content, I actually think it was slightly pulled back from Dark Knight Returns. Does Dark Knight Returns have swearing in it?
Yeah, a little bit. Like this is nudity, which Dark Knight Returns doesn't really have.
Kind of though. It's actually like hinted at, like it's a little demure, other than what I would describe as a tuft of pubic hair. But other than that, like she's not actually topless. Like it's all in shadow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's much like it's a mature book.
Yeah, I mean, and who
because
knows what comic books were selling to who?
in
But
'83
this is pre-PMRC.
there
no one
were
knows.
comic stores, but not to the extent that the direct market became.
Mhm.
So you gotta want. I mean, there's no. I'd be shocked if this was being sold in newsstands. You know, I can't imagine the mafia
Mm.
would have stood for that.
I mean, but at the same time, it is a completely different world.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in terms of what a kid was exposed to. Oddly enough, we have so much more access to things now. But I feel like when I was 11, I watched much more horrible shit than my kid does at 11. And
You think so? Who knows what's going on back there in that closed door?
no, he's not
The
interested
internet.
in that. He's like, I still got Pokemon. It's all closed, all locked down. But like at the same time, like we would watch adult movies because that's all there was.
Movies made for
No.
adults, not pornography.
Yeah, no, I mean, God forbid if we could. No, but like what I'm
Can get our
saying is
hands on it.
like we watched a lot more adult content, and I don't mean that in the
Oh,
pornography
sure.
way. Like we watched.
Well, in '83 we were 6, but by
Right.
the time of Dark
But
Knight,
even then, like you're
yeah.
watching, you're watching the A-Team, you're watching, Vietnam vets work out blowing up terrorists and stuff. Like,
Well, I mean, in 1980, Beverly Hills Cop came out in 1984,
yeah,
and
I saw it in the theater.
I watched that 100 times. Not the theater because it would have been 7, but we certainly owned the
My
VHS,
stepfather at the time made a mistake,
and I watched that movie 400 times as a kid. And there's strippers, and there's cursing,
and
and there's
I
blood.
watched Excalibur by John Borman with. I mean, that shouldn't have been okay. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't think I like this, but I can't look away.
I remember being really, really young and watching Barefoot in the Park with my mom on like TV at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
My dad used to work overnights, and I remember just being like, what is happening? It's not even like it's just a very adult movie.
So the point being, like, if you were like 10 or 11, you went and picked this up, it might have blown you away a little bit, but I think you'd take it more in stride. But also, I think a kid today is like, I have other stuff I can do. Like, so they're not gonna. I'm basing this on my small.
I don't know. It's just I just like it from a historical. It's definitely an
Yes.
artifact in terms of this is a very important book for comics.
Mhm.
And I think there's a reason why it's not spoken of like Watchmen or Dark Knight, and it's not.
It is
And
unsung.
it's partially, yes, one of them has Batman in it. But it's partially that the other one is better. It's a better story.
Yeah.
This story is not quite as successful as the art. I mean, the number of different styles he uses in this book. You can see the cover on our screen, which is the cover of I think the 4th issue, and that's not a redrawn cover. That's that's contemporaneous. That's how good it looked, and the cross hatching is wonderful.
Yeah.
And it just, but you can also see hints of his later style. There's a couple times where he gets really big and blocky with the characters and their limbs, which is what he gets to after Sin City. So like he even had his future state in his past state. He just hadn't gotten there. It was really interesting. I love looking at it.
Like these guys can do anything. Like they're making a choice,
Right,
to draw the way they draw, and then later on, it's how they most want to get across their ideas about the visuals, and I think that this has an abstract level to the art within the frame of mainstream comics, but this is about as far as the edge of mainstream comics as you could get at the time.
Oh, it's certainly what DC was going to be publishing in 1983.
Yeah. I can't imagine Marvel publishing this either at the time, but they had the Epic line, so there was a little
They tried to. They wanted it, but DC gave him slightly more freedom than
Money.
Marvel did.
Oh.
No freedom. He had a whole list of demands, and DC gave him all but the square bound. I don't think there's any editorial interference. No editor stepped in and said, "This doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, that's
maybe
true.
it makes this clearer.
But in a way, like it's pure it's like it's Beatles for sale. Yeah. Like it was like that album's all, but there's bits of it that are great. It's not Rubber Soul. And I know I keep going back to that metaphor, but it's the thing that it reminds me of the most. And it's the thing that I'm most able to appreciate it for.
It opens right up to the topless Nazis. I don't think there's an editor even listed.
Well, it's because you folded that edge of the page.
I did. I had my ribbon set to the topless Nazis page. I don't think there's even an editor listed. I don't think.
I do want to say
one for trafficking, but that's what.
So the
Did you read the entirety of Casey McKenna's poem, the 2-page poem that opens the book? Because I will admit I did not. I
don't think I saw it. Wait a minute. Do I have it?
From the Diary of Casey McKenna.
I don't have that.
It's in the digital version too.
It's not in my copy of 1987's Ronin.
Yeah, it's on the digital version too.
Yeah, it's not here.
Lucky you.
Yep. So I didn't skip it on purpose. I wrote this in like.
That's probably Jeanette Kahn.
Jeff Rovin wrote the introduction. Whoever that is.
Really?
Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. But the first thing that is noted the first thing that is name checked in the second paragraph is in 1915's Birth of a Nation, D.W. Griffith introduced a new approach to cinematography.
He did.
He did.
Absolutely
did.
In the service of terrible ideas, he changed the way films were made.
Except like there's a big asterisk there. No, it's true.
I mean, look how wonderful, and sorry if you're not watching on YouTube, but look how wonderful like the drawings of the AI are. Just using it's just daubs of ink that put together make an image. And I realize that's what drawing is, but there's no continuous lines. It's not pointillism because it's not points, but it's like that. That's really good. Also, there's Casey McKenna when she was black, and then later on she's not black, and then she's black again. Maybe that's her superpower.
That's on Lynn. Well, I mean, actually, you know what though? The color is actually all over the map in a way because that like that cover is getting a weird choice because he looks like an alien. He's got green hair and gray skin.
Well, the green is the light. Yeah,
I know that, but I don't know that. I'm reading a comic book. I see a green haired guy. It could be anything.
It's. I can't fault them because there are still in the year of our Lord 2025 people who color men in comics with blue hair because that's what they did back then because that was the highlight color. And not talking about the highlight. I've had comics where like Bruce Wayne's entire head is blue.
That's not how that's supposed to work.
We don't need to do that anymore. We have the technology. Anyway, I don't know. I one of the things I really struggled with was how to rate this book. Well, after I finished reading it, I think I have an answer, but I've changed it 3 times. So
it's very difficult not to give it a qualification because I don't know. You rate. It's not an easy read.
No,
it's enjoyable at times. It's not at others. On reflection, it's fascinating. From an art standpoint, both for what it is and what it stands for, it's fascinating. It's incredibly satisfying in that way. If you are a Frank Miller fan, it's a must read.
Yeah. I think if you're a comic, if you're interested in just the history of comics, and if you're interested in Frank Miller's artistic journey.
And Frank Miller's artistic journey is related to the overall journey of art in modern comics. I mean, it's no way around it. I mean,
he's one of the most important people to ever make comics.
He's got to be one of the first mainstream American comic writers to pull in the influence of foreign comics, specifically Japanese in this. Although I think there is a hell of a lot of 2000 AD in this. I think there's definitely European influence. Like this stuff's coming in here in a way that, Jolly Jack, who I love, and the Buscema's, Sal and John.
Yeah, but they were creating American comics. I realized comics existed before
right.
that.
No, but then you come to the 70s, but
Yeah.
all those people are drawing off of those guys.
Yeah.
This is where like, oh, there's other comics in the world,
Yeah.
and this is where I'm guessing most comic book readers saw it for the first time. Even though it's original, but 100%, like I didn't even know it existed. About Japanese comics and manga and Lone Wolf and Cub. If you're in America, you know about it because of this book and because of Frank Miller. Indirectly.
I have to imagine. I just looked it up. So Forbidden Planet Comics was like one of the big comic book stores in New York in the 80s. It's still around, but it was like the place to go. And it opened up in 1981. So you've got to imagine Frank found a lot of stuff in the store. That store possibly, or a store like that.
Yeah.
That he then started using in
Christopher Street or wherever.
So
St. Mark's Place.
What I've hit on for the rating is, I think the story is a 5. I'm sorry. I think the art is a 5. I think the story is a 2.5. And so when you go in the middle, it's 3.75. And that's where I'm hitting on 3.75 out of 5. It just wasn't an enjoyable story to read. And I'm really bummed me out.
3.8.
Oh.
It won me over. I was struggling, and then by the time I got
3.75, it's not like I hated this experience at all.
I'm saying I think that he pulled it together. I think you could have cut out 25% of this, and you'd have been just fine. You'd have been better off.
Yeah, sure. I think that's where the editor needed to come in.
But if every bit of this needed to exist and an extra chapter in order to go where he went, bring it on.
So our average is 3.775 between the two of us. That's the official iFanboy score for Ronin.
Sure. Better than Pi.
I've read worse comics.
I've read much worse comics. It's not even in that conversation.
No. I didn't like love it. I finished. I was like, oh, that was complicated. But it wasn't like I read it going, oh, that was fucking terrible. It wasn't. It was.
I was in the middle where I was worried, and then when it I was like, okay. And I think this conversation,
the middle's a bit of a slog.
Yeah. But after, I was thinking about this, after they get in like the Morlock tunnels, and there is that amazing sort of scene in the dark,
right?
With that, it's these totally black panels where he's telling you everything that's happening through word balloons, whatever. But there's a candlelight fight, and the Ronin meets Casey for the first time, and then they're like, "Hey, we should do it here." Whatever. That's in Lone Wolf comics too.
I tell you what. That scene, that's where John Costanza shines. It's all about him.
You're telling me this guy gets an Eisner? I'm doing all the work.
Sets the mood. You know what's going on based on the word balloon placement. Like,
this guy gives me a black page. What does he make of it? He makes nothing.
What's his page rate? This black page.
I guarantee you, it's more than me.
Oh.
It's a brassiere. Did you hear what my cousin John's doing? He's working with this crazy kid from a farm. He's getting $2 a page. He's doing all the work
from Kansas or something. So, yeah, I'm glad you picked it because it's been sitting on my shelf since 2008. I've certainly looked through it, but
just for context, that's 17 years.
I know. I did have to dust it.
Mm-hmm.
I did have to take it out and do some brushing, but I'm glad. I'm glad that I'm allergic to it, so it's even more problematic. I'm allergic to everything. So
I really thought that I had that absolute version.
You did. You're like, oh, I'll read the absolute version.
I'll read the absolute version, and I had the paperback up here, so I just was like, I'll just grab that and get it started. And then like halfway through it, I was like, I'm gonna go grab the absolute, and I went down to my shelf, and I was like,
I don't know.
Did I already take this upstairs? Did I? I don't have it. It was Absolute V for Vendetta that I guess I was thinking was.
It was the final 4-page.
Oh my God.
That I was like, whoa! I was in my bed reading it, and I got to it, and I unfolded it, and I unfolded it, and I was like, it's still going.
Yeah. Here's a tip about this: it ends abruptly.
It does. It does not tell you what happens.
It's the most abrupt ending of a comic book I can remember in some time,
and it doesn't really give you any answers on what the final page.
It's like he was drawing it feverishly, and they were like, "You're out of space," and he was like,
"I'm done." So there you go. There's Ronin from Frank Miller, Lynn Varley, and John Costanza from 1987. At least that's the first collected edition that Josh has. DC Comics. For all the reasons why we talked about, it's worth to read, even if we give it a somewhat lower score than we often give these books. It's an important book. It's an important book, and so you should check it out. The next Booksplode, I think I have an idea what it's going to be, but I'm not going to announce it yet because I haven't talked to Josh about it. But we'll be back in 2 months for that. In the meantime, you can go to iFanboy.com, where Josh and I, and sometimes our friend Ryan, Dr. Ryan, and some other people talk about the week's new comic books. We have our shows that I mentioned earlier at the start of the show. This show alternates with Josh's Talksplode interview show. Last month it was Aubrey Titterson. Next month, who knows? Maybe it'll be Frank Miller. And then we have our Mediasplode monthly show. We talk about non-comic book media. We have our special edition shows. We're reviewing Superman and Fantastic Four when they come out in July. So all those shows are available at iFanboy.com. We thank you for watching. We thank the patrons at patreon.com/iFanboy for unlocking this show. You should thank them too, because you're getting to watch it. Freeloader. And yeah, I'm glad New York isn't like it was in the 80s. Even though I was perfectly happy there and had a good childhood. It's a good reminder that things are better. As bad as they seem, things are better.
And also, if you need a Citibank ATM, I got good news for you, New Yorkers. You need a Citibank ATM or a Chase branch, or perhaps just a Dwayne Reed. Or
which one's going out of business? I think Dwayne Reed's going out of business. And
Dwayne Reed's just Walgreens. I mean, there's going to be.
I mean, this is not the place to talk about pharmacy and politics, but I did have a nice conversation with my pharmacist about the current state of the pharmacy in America, and it wasn't a good one.
No, that's all the states. I did the calculation here, and this trade paperback, which is 38 years old. This book.
Okay, it's in great condition.
It is in great condition. Like, there's no degradation.
My Dark Knight Returns first edition is like sections of pages fall out.
So it would have been the same as $48 right now for a 6-issue trade. But tell you what, quality materials.
Well, the single issues were $2.50.
I wonder if it says where it was printed.
You look it up while I do the calculation on $2.50, 1983, $2.50. We'll see what if inflation's done to comics. Come on, $8 is equivalent to $8 for the single issue.
That's not unheard of now at all.
For a double-sized book? No, not at all.
This is printed in Canada. It was probably Quebecois.
There you go. It's the smell of maple.
So many of these. Bob Rozakis, still there. Or it was. Jeanette Kahn, Paul Levitz.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. We'll be back next time. Until then, I'm Conor.
Wakarimasu. That means, do you understand me? I don't think that's
not appropriate. You should get that tattooed, though.